Something horrible is happening in Jefferson County, Colorado. What was once a quiet suburb just west of Denver is now ground zero in a battle for control over students, their safety, and the future of leadership in public education. Let's talk about the real-life Twilight Zone episode that's happening right now in Jefferson County schools.
Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look.
Now listen, I enjoy researching these stories, and thankfully the team I work with at Freedom Foundation is full of absolute all-stars who know everything there is to know about everything related to union crazy. So any question I have is able to be answered. And with that said, as much as I try to, I cannot explain stupid. And I don't mean to be rude. Well, maybe like a little bit. But there, unfortunately, is a whole lot of stupid operating in Jefferson County right now. Similar to my Colorado Springs Union episode, this story takes place in Colorado. Jefferson County is an area that spans just the metroplex outside the metroplex of Denver. Jefferson County is also referred to casually as JeffCo, so if you hear me say that, JeffCo just means Jefferson County. They shorten it because Jefferson County is a mouthful. I'll give you that one. We picked this story up in May of this year, 2025, with the Jefferson County Education Association, JCEA, the JeffCo Public Schools Board of Education, and their superintendent, Tracy Dorland. Basically, Superintendent Tracy Dorland started making some changes, which she possesses all the ability to do so in her position. And while some changes or actions of hers did stir up some reasonable concern from various parties in the county, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later, there are some changes that Dorland made in an effort to basically keep the district neutral. And those are the changes that made the union completely lose their marbles. Like any teacher union that is ridiculous and deluded enough to think that they are the most important authority in the schools, JCEA believes that they can just run their mouth and not face any consequences from saying ridiculous things. So, having a problem with the way that Superintendent Tracy Dorland was choosing to run her office and choosing to make the choices she did, the union decided to hold what they called a vote of no confidence, and then penned a letter to the JeffCo Public Schools Board of Education, pretty much saying that. What you might think that means is that perhaps all 5,000 plus members of the union chose to come together and collectively vote to show their lack of support in the superintendent. But we are talking about a union here, so there's no shot in heck it's going to be that simple or straightforward. What actually happened is that there are 14 members of union leadership, which is the council and board of directors in this case. Those 14 members were upset that Superintendent Dorland didn't consult them in any of the changes she was making. And in retaliation, they chose among the 14 of them to take a vote of no confidence and then pen the letter to the superintendent to show her very vividly that they seemingly lacked confidence in what she was doing. TLDR, the union leadership threw a fit because an elected official whom they don't like anyway, and who also doesn't owe them anything by the very nature of her job, didn't include them on any decision-making. I will link the full letter that the union wrote in case anyone does want to read it, but complaints in it that they wrote about range from very reasonable concerns like student safety to complaints that are so stupid it turns the whole letter into a joke. As in, under a subsection titled Failure to Address Urgent Conditions in Schools, the union chooses to include divesting of resources in equity work, including shrinking the number of EDI specialists from 3 to 1, making changes to the toolkit for supporting transgender and gender-expansive students, and changing policies around pronoun use in email signatures. If I play devil's advocate here and say that on the off chance the union did write a beautiful, well-articulated letter to the board, any of their credibility would disappear the moment they chose to write in something stupid and then equate that stupid thing to an urgent concern. JCEA, this letter honestly passes for something a sane person would write, up until the point where you go, boo-hoo, the super made me take my pronouns out of my email signature, and now I'm going to make it everyone's freaking problem. The union, JCEA, is so used to getting what they want, and the reason why they feel so emboldened to run their mouth is because them and the state union, the Colorado Education Association, which is just CEA, have spent nearly $200,000 electing the 5 current board members that sit on JeffCo's board. The union has spent so much money getting their toy soldiers into the school board because they think that controlling the school board system is as easy as point and shoot. It's disgusting, firstly, that the union feels this political power is even within their rights, and secondly, that they have gone so far to try and prove their wielding of it. Add to that literal definition of a power trip is a superintendent who knows that she isn't beholden to the union, and so when she chooses to not include them on stuff she doesn't need to anyway, the union flips its lid. Listen, it doesn't matter if you are a huge supporter of the superintendent or if you couldn't give a rat's about what she does. The crux of the argument here is that the union doesn't belong in this discussion at all. But the union would like you to think that their opinion is of the most importance. So let's go back to what is the main job of a union to begin with anyway, which is to bargain over the wages, benefits, and working conditions of their members, which is teachers in this case. You know what's not in that job description? Gosh, let me think of a few things. Bankrolling school board elections, retaliating against and commenting on a superintendent, and using the voices of your 5,000 plus members to back your very subjective opinions. Thankfully, I'm not the only person who sees this absolute bizarreness for what it is, and the Associate Chief of Human Resources, Scott Barnes, had something to say about it too. Barnes sent a 3-page, masterfully written letter to the JeffCo board pointing out 2 very important things. First, out of the 2 associations in the county, neither represent more than 35% of the population. Barnes writes, quote, "Let that sink in for a moment. Neither of JeffCo's bargaining units serve as a majority voice of the employee population. In fact, it's the exact opposite. They are a minority voice," close quote. Secondly, he calls into the spotlight the fact that there is little evidence from any of the populations that the board actually serves, like parents and students, that, quote, "demonstrates Superintendent Dorland is not doing her job effectively," close quote. And then he highlights again that the only evidence present to cast doubt on the super is from a union that is a minority voice, who also likely didn't consult their population on this matter either. Barnes' clear words do a fantastic job of cutting right through the BS. Because in a county like JeffCo, where there is so little transparency and so much trouble, anyone has to start asking questions about why a union that represents such a small population is allowed to walk around and have such a strong influence on what is going on. It doesn't make sense to let a proven minority voice shout the loudest here, and Barnes unfortunately seems to be the only one asking that. And then especially when you consider what the union deems important enough to even comment on, this feels like a freaking Twilight Zone episode, because JeffCo has seen a slew of horrible safety issues in the past few years, including a Title IX investigation from the Federal Department of Education, a high school psychologist arrested for child sexual abuse, and a chief of schools being caught with child pornography, plus a nationwide story about a staff at a JeffCo school who stood complicit as a fellow teacher groomed a high school student until she moved in with her. That same union that is trying to claim the high road over Superintendent Dorland by complaining over the guidelines of pronouns and email signatures turns a blind eye, nay, is entirely complicit when it comes to these horrible, horrible stories of what is happening in their district. And because I am nothing if not thorough, and maybe a little bit annoying, I'm going to provide details to support my exact argument of why this is true. On June 2nd, the U.S. Department of Education posted a press release designating June as Title IX month and highlighting that they would be investigating a policy present in JeffCo schools that says that on overnight school trips, students would be forced to share sleeping accommodations, beds, with students who identify as the same gender identity. Which, as we well know at this time, basically means that parents were misled to believe that boys and girls would be separate for overnight sleeping accommodations, when really any boys who claim to be a girl would be allowed to sleep in the same area as biological girls. The Department of Education specifically is looking at a case where parents of an 11-year-old girl in the district discovered that their daughter would have had to share a bed with a male student on an overnight school trip without having to be notified of that by the school beforehand. Prior to that, on May 13th, a JeffCo school psychologist was arrested for a massive charges, including alleged child sexual abuse and soliciting child prostitution. In what can be called a pattern of sexual misconduct, this deeply concerning issue in the district is not a one-off case, but one of many. Before that, too, in 2024, a JeffCo chief of schools was caught with child pornography. And as this investigation was underway and the situation started blowing up, the former chief of schools chose to take a permanent self-imposed dirt nap, is how I'll choose to say that, which of course isn't a great look on the district or the union either. And in perhaps the most damning evidence against the union, back in April of 2022, the staff of a JeffCo school stood by as a minor student was aggressively groomed by a teacher, and then assisted said student in declaring homelessness so that she would be free to move in with said teacher. In an article and op-ed written by Freedom Foundation's own Courtney Salt, the principal reportedly, quote, defended the teacher, saying Miss Kearney takes interest in helping kids navigate their sexuality, close quote. Ew. And if you are questioning why this story from 3 years ago is relevant, it's relevant for 2 main reasons. Firstly, in her op-ed, Salt highlights a new bill that was passed by the Colorado House that declares misgendering and dead naming as a new form of child abuse. A bill that, by no small coincidence, is sponsored primarily by representatives of JeffCo, who are also endorsed and funded by local and national teachers' unions. Additionally, there are now rumors that the teachers and staff who are under investigation in relation to this horrible grooming story have lawyered up with the help of none other than the union, JCEA. JCEA, The union that is denouncing the actions of Superintendent Dorland over pronoun guidelines is now potentially protecting teachers who have allowed and assisted the alleged grooming and abuse of a minor. JCEA, I want you to look me in the eyes when I say this. You have as much backbone as a bowl of Jell-O. You have no right to pretend you have any sort of moral superiority when you are letting this sort of behavior happen in your schools, let alone choosing to protect it. It's anyone's guess how you can even sleep at night, because I can't even figure out how you get up in the morning. And as if we needed any more evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that what is happening in JeffCo is despicable, the one and only libs of TikTok tweeted back in February that JeffCo may be the worst school district in the entire country. As always, every piece of information I've referenced in this episode is linked in the YouTube description, because here at Freedom Foundation in the new Frontline, we give you cold, hard facts and evidence. Because while unions may lie, the truth certainly doesn't. And the fight for tomorrow starts today. The unions may have started this battle, but we are here to finish it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.